TV audio network, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms.
Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact us at aimyourdigital.com for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. We are Bonneville Salt Lake. Your success starts at aimyourdigital.com.
Save $2,500 on a new furnace and air conditioner from Any Hour Services. For more information, call Any Hour Services or schedule a free estimate online at anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
Up Spanish Fork Canyon, Highway 6 eastbound is still closed starting from Powerhouse Road. No word on when the eastbound lane will be open, but in the valley, I-15 is at full speeds up and down the Wasatch Front. With over 30-plus specialties and multiple locations across Utah, Revere has you covered for all your health needs. Revere Health, your partner in health, your partner for life. Online at reverehealth.com. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, the sun will come out this afternoon, but it'll stay cool with a high of only 50 degrees, 54 and partly cloudy tomorrow, and a chance of rain again on Saturday. Right now, 45 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, finally, after 22 days, the House of Representatives has a Speaker of the House. After weeks of chaos, there was actually unanimity amongst the Republicans in electing Speaker Mike Johnson to lead that body. So is this the beginning of the end of the chaos in the House, or is this just the end of the beginning? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, yesterday when Mike Johnson picked up the gavel to become the Speaker of the House, he actually became the least experienced Speaker of the House in 140 years. This has traditionally been a position that people have been in the House for a long time before ascending to become the Speaker. Of course, Mike Johnson was elected just in 2016, so he's less than a decade in the making there. The average, I think, is about 18 years. And so there are some things you do learn. I actually think it's a good thing to have a little higher rate of turnover and less seniority there in that House. But he comes in at a time where there are a host of issues, a lot of big challenges. And to help us break down some of those challenges, we always turn to Niall Stanage, of course, White House columnist for The Hill, political contributor for News Nation. And Niall, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Boyd. Good to be here.
So let's get into some of these challenges. Right away, Speaker Mike Johnson has his hands and plate full. What is the thing that you're watching most closely amidst all of those challenges?
I think really whether he can unify his conference is probably the big question. There have obviously been very big wounds that have been deepened by the events of the past 2 or 3 weeks. There are policy differences, as you're well aware, between the most conservative members of the conference, maybe most MAGA would be a better way of putting it, and more centrist members. But there's also a lot of personal enmity. And so can the new speaker bind up those wounds? I think that's a very big question.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a big test if he can put those things behind. I thought he did do a very nice job yesterday. I thought his speech from the well of the House of Representatives was one of saying, look, this is going to be about transparency, certainty in terms of the process, and then accountability. And he's going to have some opportunities right out of the gate to start doing that, starting with what needs to be done in about 20 days from now, which is fund the government.
Yes, that's right. I mean, obviously, the clock is ticking on the next government shutdown, November 17th being the deadline there by which a deal would have to be arrived at. And so, there has been time burnt off of the clock. It is possible that there could be another stopgap measure put in place. That seems to be what the new speaker is aiming at least in the short term. But even that isn't without political risks. I mean, it was a stopgap measure agreed a very short time ago that ultimately doomed Kevin McCarthy, because then Speaker McCarthy had to depend on Democratic votes to get that over the finish line. More Democrats actually voted for it than Republicans.
Yeah.
And that caused considerable disquiet among his conference.
Yeah, no question. Now, one of the things you pointed out in your piece at thehill.com today that I thought was really perceptive, and that is just there is this feeling of exhaustion across the Republican conference, and he might be able to use that to his advantage.
Yeah, I think that's right, because what has really happened is that most Republicans, the vast bulk of them in the House, really don't want any more internal drama, at least in the short term. They may differ in their views of how much electoral damage this debacle has caused, but it's certainly an embarrassment. It's certainly something that the vast bulk of them didn't want to happen. They're keenly aware of the fact that the House GOP looks kind of foolish right now. And so the appetite to plunge back into new speaker battles is very, very limited. Theoretically, at least, that gives Speaker Johnson the capacity to have some amount of clear water in front of him as he tries to enact some rather difficult political measures.
Yeah, there are some very tricky wickets to get his way through, and some of those that are going to also just be right on the horizon are dealing with those aid packages, both for Israel and then also for Ukraine, things that the president has put forward in terms of a one size, put them all in kind of package. How do you see that playing out?
So this is really an interesting point, because in the package that the president has put forth, it's really linking together a number of separate issues to try to maximize the chances of that legislation passing. The most obvious example is the linkage between aid to Israel and aid to Ukraine. That is something that the White House is eager to do, and they have some support from the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell in linking those two things. But there are others, both in the House and the Senate, who don't want those two issues linked together. And I think that's going to be a point of contention in the coming days, probably as soon as next week.
Yeah, and so as that starts to play out a little bit, I think there are some other things. Something else that you pointed out that there are very few people who've been really zeroed in on this. I've been saying for a number of weeks, Niall, that if I were a Democratic strategist, the ads are already cut in terms of what I would be running against Republican House members for 2024, and that is this is a party of grievance. They clearly cannot govern. And so as Mike Johnson tries to navigate this group as Speaker, clearly it could be a very short-term speakership, because if the Republicans prove that they can't govern, it's not very likely they will be in the majority on January of 2025, and then the Democrats will get to choose the speaker anyway.
Yes, exactly. And it is worth noting that the Republicans do have an extremely slender majority in the House as it is. That was one of the contributory factors to the mess of the speakership issue, because any nominee could only afford to lose at the time 4 Republican votes, and, that's not many. So there's this very narrow majority. The Republicans do need, I think, to prove that they can actually serve the people and address practical problems that Americans are facing in their day-to-day lives. It is challenging to do that when you have a narrow majority in the House, you're in the minority in the Senate, and you don't have the White House. But the hope, I think, when one speaks to Republicans is that they can, as it were, knuckle down to business here, get stuff done, show that they can be a responsible party of governance. There's no guarantee that that will happen, of course. It could, again, sort of dwindle or fall apart into sort of internal strife, and I think that would be, objectively speaking, damaging to the party's electoral chances.
Yeah, no question about that for sure. Give me, is there anything else that you noticed just in this early 24-hour period with Mike Johnson with the Speaker's gavel? I thought it was interesting that he immediately called them back into session, back to the well, that he's canceled the 2 weeks of in-state work periods so that they'll be there in Washington. I know that's caused some angst on both the left and the right of events and speeches and fundraisers that they were going to be going to. Anything else that you have noticed or things that you're going to continue to keep your eye on in these early days of this speakership for Mike Johnson?
So I think the point that you make about getting down to work and cancelling that period is an interesting one in and of itself. The other point that I think is interesting is the new speaker is a very socially conservative figure, even by Republican Party standards. And so on one hand, that could help him politically in terms of his linkage to evangelicals, to other very socially conservative fragments or segments of the Republican Party. But it is going to be something that Democrats are also going to target as well, because clearly they see electoral advantage on issues like abortion following the striking down of Roe versus Wade. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out.
No question. Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill and political contributor for News Nation. Niall, as always, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your perspective.
Thank you. A pleasure.
All right, that's Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill, and there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to watch for as it relates to Mike Johnson being the Speaker of the House. Can he get things done over the next couple of weeks as the clock ticks down towards another government shutdown showdown? If he can navigate that, get a stopgap measure, or preferably something a little bit longer than what we've seen both parties doing for so long, that is going to be an interesting component. He also has to deal with the fundraising component as being the speaker. Sadly, that's become an important part of that role, is elections. It really wasn't designed to be that way. It's really supposed to shepherd things through the House of Representatives, get them passed so they can be sent over to the Senate and on to a president, again, either political party. So those are going to be tricky waters for Mike Johnson to navigate as well. Can he unify the party? And I think in particular, it's going to be interesting to see if he can deliver on his promise. And I think it was the most significant promise made in an acceptance speech by a speaker, Republican or Democrat, in a long time. And that is that his office would be open because he represents all the members of the House, and that there will be transparency and honesty, that there will be certainty in terms of the process, which I think is one of the big things we never really talk about, so that then there can ultimately be accountability. He's set a very high bar in terms of that standard. I think how that plays out in reality will determine what kind of speakership Mike Johnson has in the end.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's football season, NBA basketball season, and a season of important and sensitive stories. Elections at home, war abroad. So depend on Tim and Amanda for the latest breaking news from 5 to 9. Get analysis and discussion with David Dejanovic and Boyd Matheson. And updated news and traffic as you drive home with Jeff Kaplan. In this season, rely on KSL for certainty. We have you covered at KSL News Radio.
I know it's Thursday, but give me 60 seconds and I'll explain how spending $29 guarantees your furnace won't break down this winter, or we'll give you your money back. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and when you have Any Hour do the annual maintenance on your furnace, it comes with our no breakdown guarantee. 801-443-7400. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Thursday, October 26th, and mention you heard this ad, you'll lock in a $95 savings and get your furnace tuned up for only $29. 801-443-7400. If your furnace breaks down anytime this winter after we tune it up, we'll dispatch a technician to your home to diagnose and troubleshoot your system for free. And we'll give you back the $29 you paid for the tune-up. Where else are you going to find an offer with this little risk? You literally get your money back if your furnace breaks down. Call Any Hour Services today and schedule your $29 furnace tune-up. 801-443-7400. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Did you know that feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that your digestive system isn't working at its best? Taking Metamucil every day can help. Metamucil fiber powders help promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. The gelling action of this special fiber traps and removes waste so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Metamucil, promoting digestive health for a better you. Learn more at metamucil.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Pro football player Travis Kelce is pressed for time during the football season, so he does two things at once. Whether it's grilling while mowing,
two things at once,
or getting this season's updated COVID-19 shot at the same visit as his flu shot.
Two things at once.
You can be like Travis and ask your pharmacist about getting this season's COVID-19 shot at the same visit as your flu shot, if you're due for both, as recommended by the CDC. Learn more and schedule at vaccines.gov. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Utah's business landscape is evolving, and the key to success is staying ahead of the curve. Get ready for an extraordinary event that promises to take your business to new heights. Join everyone at Utah Business Forward, November 16th, for the premier conference exclusively designed for executives hungry for practical insights and actionable strategies to propel their business forward. Featuring more than 30 of Utah's foremost business influencers, this event covers a diverse range of topics. Notable guest speakers include Gail Miller and Brandon Fugel. Attendees can expect to gain a wealth of valuable insights and knowledge. The conference is designed with you in mind, addressing the very challenges that executives like you face daily. With 5 distinct tracks covering entrepreneurship, international business, marketing, people and culture, and strategy. You'll gain invaluable knowledge across a range of crucial areas. Reserve your seat today at forward.utahbusiness.com.
Hey guys, do you know what makes Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City different? You. Every Revive treatment and medication is personalized just for you. Revive has the experts that guys go to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their daily performance. Since 2011, they've helped thousands of local men suffering with the symptoms of low T and ED. Their goal is simple, to get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. Your best performance requires more than generic ED medications or a low-dose testosterone booster at a low-ball price like you find online. Revive medications are custom compounded, affordable, and guaranteed to resolve your issues. Stop dealing with the symptoms of low T or ED. Book your T-check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit us at revivemenshealth.com.
Get deeper insights on the news from inside sources.
Thursday at 10, KSL investigators discovered more than 100 names missing from Utah's sex offender registry.
That's not something any parent wants to hear.
Making a tool many families rely on incomplete.
That's scary.
See how KSL's efforts uncovered the problem.
There has been a delay.
Making Utah families and children safer.
How will the Department of Corrections fix this problem?
Utah's sex offender registry incomplete. Thursday on KSL 5 News at 10.
Well, thanks to the great work done by the investigative team at KSL. This is another one of those uncomfortable conversations we have to get comfortable with if we're going to get the issues straight. And really thrilled to have joining us back on the program, Daniela Rivera, an investigative journalist for KSL, Kiera Fairmont, executive producer for KSL TV. And welcome back to the show. And you've got something coming up tonight at 10 p.m. on KSL 5 TV. And Danny, give us a little perspective in terms of what we're looking for tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having us. So, over a year-long effort looking at Utah's sex offender and kidnapping registry has led to tonight's investigation. We have been able to uncover more than 100 convicted sex offenders who should be on Utah's registry who were not.
Yeah.
So that's what we have for tonight at 10.
Yeah, and Kara, I know you've been doing a lot of the digging in all of this and the research. Give us a sense of kind of going through that process, what you discovered, kind of the aha moment, and then what's the reaction been?
Right. So this actually wasn't the story we started out looking into. We were looking at a list. I got a list of about 300 convicted sex offenders who had been paroled. And as I was looking for some sex offenders that may have reoffended, doing some checks on them, that's when I started to see this pattern that a lot of these names were not showing up on the registry. And so that kind of shifted the focus a little bit, and we went name by name by name by name, trying to dig into, okay, well, what was the offense? Are they supposed to be there? Are they still supposed to be there? And after months, we got a really solid list of about 200 names that we believe were supposed to be there. And more than 100 of them have now been added. So we know they were supposed to be there.
Yeah. And Danny, as you guys have gone through that whole process, some of this was not necessarily the fault of the offender. right? That they were actually going through the process the right way. It was more something happening on the state end.
Yeah, and so Utah's Department of Corrections is responsible for maintaining the registry. And it was interesting as we dug into some of these folks who should have been on the registry. For instance, one who will be featured in tonight's report in Lehigh was serving time on probation. And so the same department that is responsible for making sure his information is on the registry is having face-to-face interaction with him all the time. And so we looked at his supervision records, and it appears he's largely compliant. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
He's checking in. He's updating his registry information. And yet he's still not on the registry, undetected by his neighbors who would have checked the registry for more than 500 days. And so we had a lot of questions for Department of Corrections. How is it that these folks are updating their information and the public isn't seeing it?
Yeah. And then what's the response been, Kara, as you've interacted with the state in terms of where are the gaps, where are the holes, why is this still happening? This doesn't seem to be like part of the let's make sure we're safe when everyone has the right information category.
Right. Well, you'll see a lot of that in the story tonight. But it's important to know whether or not you agree with us having a sex offender registry or not, because there are people that have beliefs on both sides of that. The state of Utah and Utah leaders have said this is a tool that's necessary for the public to have to protect their safety. And so the promise that's been made to Utah's public is that this information is there, it's timely, it's accurate, it's up to date. And that is not being fulfilled.
Yeah, and that to me, that's where everyone has to step up to that accountability side of it. And in order to have accountability, you have to have transparency, and then you also have to have certainty in the process. And I think that kind of goes back to what you were saying before, Danny, in terms of even those that are doing it right, it's still not being done right, which ultimately means the public isn't as safe or doesn't have the information they should have.
Absolutely. And, you talk about having tough conversations here, and I think it's important to acknowledge that this is a community that faces significant stigmas in our society, and it's important to us that this reporting is not trying to perpetuate any of that. There's no, we're not saying because they're a sex offender, they're going to reoffend. We're simply looking into whether the state has made good on its promises to the public.
Yeah, and to me, that's the whole thing. It's the promise. And yes, there's redemption, and yes, there's a path forward for those who have made egregious mistakes that have hurt and damaged a lot of lives. And there are paths forward, but the process matters. And Kara, give us one last thought in terms of that process and kind of what comes next. How do we continue this conversation so we can get to what we all want, which is the right outcomes, that we have safer communities, more confidence in each other?
Yeah, I think what you'll see tonight is what may be surprising is what we find from Department of Corrections. And, I think Utahns, they just want to feel like they have everything that they need to protect their families. And this is important information that Utahns should have access to, and it will be interesting to see, what Department of Corrections does moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great reporting. It's great work. This is part of the hard work and heavy lifting journalism that we really have to promote in not just our community, but in the country. It's not the gotcha stuff. It is it's just the hard work and heavy lifting. There will be a report tonight at 10. You don't want to miss that on KSL 5 TV. But this represents a year of really great journalism, hard questions, straightforward reporting, getting to the answer so we can get to the better solutions. And thanks to both of you for joining us today and for this great work. We'll look forward to seeing it tonight at 10 o'clock on Channel 5 TV.
Thank you.
All right. Again, this is a crucial conversation we all have to get our heads around, and we have to get to that transparency and that trust in the process. If we don't have trust in the process, there's nowhere for us to go from there. So, again, check that out. Danielle Rivera, investigative journalist for KSL. Kara Fairmond, executive producer for KSL TV. And this will be 10 p.m. tonight on Channel 5 is the place you want to check that out. And I just want to reiterate what this takes. I don't know if we all appreciate the thousands and thousands of hours and the deep digging and the hard questions and the dead ends and all of that it takes to produce this kind of content. It's something that's unique, and it's something that you always get at KSL 5 TV. And so thanks again to both of them for joining us. We're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. Police still searching for Robert Card, believed to be the shooter in last night's mass shootings in the state of Maine. Residents there have been asked to remain indoors.
It's a community on edge. He's still on the loose, so we're being careful. Lewiston neighbor Isaac Binney worried the suspect in last night's deadly mass shooting, identified as Robert Card, is still out there. Victoria Wilson is a regular at the Spare Time bowling alley in town, one of the shooting scenes.
I mean, it is a frequent spot that we take children.
Now neighbors are staying inside as police recommend while they search for Card, considered armed and dangerous, wanted for multiple counts of murder. Derek Dennis, ABC News in Lewiston, Maine.
A woman was killed in a head-on crash on Highway 6 east of Spanish Fork this morning. Utah Highway Patrol says the woman was driving an SUV that crossed the center line and hit a FedEx truck head-on. The truck driver was seriously injured and taken to the hospital. Salt Lake City Police Chief Mike Brown says 2 new squads focused on homelessness are having a big impact. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
These 2 squads were started in July, focused on 2 homeless shelters in the city. And the chief says the number of calls is now down, but he says the biggest measure of success is that officers are building trust in the community. Those who work at the Gail Miller Resource Center say that trust has made a difference, but there's still a huge need for affordable housing so that fewer people are vulnerable, living on the streets, and needing help.
The chief says they'll continue funding these squads going forward. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average now down on the day 144 points right now. The NASDAQ is down 162 points. And our KSL weather, we've got skies clearing, but it's still pretty chilly. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:30.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
I'm a big believer in investing into what the wealthiest people in the world invest into. But it's not easy to know exactly what that is, and it hasn't always been possible for regular folks like you and I. But that's changing. I'm Jeff Jr. with Trajan Wealth, and if you've done a good job acquiring some assets, now is the time to consider private equity. Private equity is ownership of private companies that aren't traded on the stock market and in most cases are very exclusive. Examples could include ownership of apartments or nursing homes, dental practices, solar farms, you name it. Why do so many billionaires invest into private equity? Because of historically low correlation to the stock market and historically higher returns. If you have a goal with your portfolio but aren't there yet, call Trajan Wealth today. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. May require accreditation.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. I want you to know that it's the little things that count. Any remodeler can say they treat customers right. When it comes to siding, gutters, windows, and exteriors, it's hard to know for sure. If a contractor uses cheap generic nails instead of super grippy ridge shaft nails for your siding, would you even know? If they use cheap $4 caulk to install your new windows instead of paying $9 a tube for the good stuff, could you tell by looking? It all comes down to the details and trust. At RGS Exteriors, we only do things one way, the right way. We never cut corners. We never skimp on details. We never do less than the job requires. That's why we offer our industry's exclusive 10-year everything guarantee. And it's why we have the happiest customers. If you need any gutters, siding, or replacement windows, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online at rgsutah.com.
Made to Shine. Real stories from Shane Company customers.
So last week, my boyfriend said, I have a surprise for you. And I totally thought he was going to propose, but it was just tickets to a baseball game. Then during the game, Will You Marry Me was up on the big screen, and he was down on one knee holding the most beautiful engagement ring. It was so sparkly.
Our expert jewelers set every center stone by hand, so you'll shine forever. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
Save $2,500 on a new furnace and air conditioner from Any Hour Services. For more information, call Any Hour Services or schedule a free estimate online at anyhourservices.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
Crews have just opened up the eastbound lane on Highway 6 heading up Spanish Fork Canyon, but residual delays remain from the mouth of the canyon back to 2500 east. We also have a crash in Salt Lake County that's on northbound Redwood Road. At 8300 south, traffic is being redirected into the median to go around the incident. Visit the new R5 Homes Affordable Flex ADU single-family house, which helps offset your mortgage with an independent but connectable rental basement. Contact R5 Homes for your $1,000 gift toward purchase or referral. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, the rain will stop, the sun will come out this afternoon, but it stays cool with a high of only 54 degrees, or 50 degrees today. Then tomorrow, 54 and partly cloudy, and there's a chance of rain again on Saturday. And right now, we're at 46 degrees, mostly cloudy skies at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas at KSL 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
One of the biggest labor strikes in many years, it could be coming to an end soon. Ford, one of the three major car manufacturers, has struck a tentative deal with auto workers. So we want to take a look at what is the deal. What does it mean for workers? What does it mean for those companies? And what does it mean for President Biden and his administration? Someone who's been taking a deep dive look at that is Tanya Snyder, of course, covers transportation for Politico. And Tanya, welcome to the show. You and your colleagues have done a deep dive into some of the things that have been happening. But start by just giving us a lay of the land. What are you hearing? What does it look like this tentative deal may be?
Well, thanks so much for having me. Yes, this is a big deal. The strike has been going on for about 6 weeks. The UAW has been expanding the strike little by little, sometimes as many as a few times a week. And they had most recently struck a Ford, the Kentucky truck plant. That was about 2 weeks ago. And then they did a major Stellantis plant, a major GM plant. But we've been watching Ford especially closely because for a while it seemed that they were closest with Ford. They had the best relationship with Ford. And then that did seem to break down around the time of that Kentucky truck plant strike. But, you know, they've kept at it. They've kept going. And they have a deal now which gives a 25% wage increase over 4 years to workers. Cost of living increases, that was something that the union had given up in 2009 amid the auto bailout, just trying to keep these companies afloat. The workers had really made a lot of concessions, and they hadn't gotten those things back yet until now. They got an end to wage tiers where newer workers were coming in at a much, much lower rate. And so the starting wage is actually going to go up about 68%, which is incredible. And then temp workers are going to get a raise of 150%. So those are huge changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know there's still a few hurdles. And as always with those kind of negotiations, it's I's dotted and T's crossed and ink on the paper for those to be done. Is there any sense in terms of how this might spill over or splash over into the other car manufacturers, the other strikes going on?
Yeah, there's a widespread expectation that we're going to hear about tentative deals at General Motors and Stellantis soon, possibly within days. Like I said, the strike expanded to Stellantis and GM plants very recently, so things clearly, there was still a lot of ground to be made up there as of just a few days ago. But as UAW President Sean Fain said in his address announcing the deal with Ford, it does not benefit Stellantis and GM to keep their plants closed and their workers out on strike while Ford is getting back online and their production is coming back. So at this point, the kind of the advantage is really for GM and Stellantis to settle this quickly, and we expect that to happen.
Yeah, and of course, one of those that'll be cheering all of that on is President Joe Biden, who has always touted himself as the pro-labor president, and that's really been indicative throughout his career in the Senate as vice president. So this has been important to him. I thought it was really interesting, and you noted this in your piece. I thought this was really telling that the former acting labor secretary Seth Harris said that, hey, I'm not giving President the credit for this, but he did give him credit for creating an environment. Talk to us just a little bit about that, because I think that's significant in any negotiations, clearly played out as it relates to the auto workers.
We've been hearing that a lot, that, this is, the union did this, the leadership of the union really made this happen, and of course the workers on the picket lines made this happen. But that the president, by being so clearly on the union side, has really given them the moral support and given the workers the moral support, kind of just knowing that the administration is on their side. And it helps also for the industry to know, as they're looking for federal grants, as they're looking for tax incentives, as they're looking for anything from the federal government, just knowing that this is a president that really has thrown his support behind the working people, behind the union movement, and that they're going to need to play nice with labor if they want to have a good relationship with the administration. I'm not saying that President Biden has given ultimatums like that to anyone, but I do think that the automakers know that this is a president that is going to look kindly on companies that work well with their workers.
Yeah, and so as you look at this hopefully coming to an end, there's always kind of that component of you end the war, can you win the peace, and can you move everybody forward, both in terms of relationship between ownership and the workers themselves, but also it's in an industry that is facing immense pressure, real challenges, both in terms of moving more towards electric, dealing with international competitors. What do you see on the horizon, Tanya, in terms of things we should be watching for that may really test how the relationship is working and working moving forward?
I think the transition to electric vehicles and a clean energy economy more broadly is testing a lot of these relationships, and it has tested workers' place at the table. And that is something that the UAW was really seeing eroding before this contract, and one thing that they were really working to get back. And so part of that is, for example, the UAW has seen some of its unionized plants close, and then new electric vehicle plants, especially battery plants, open just down the street, and they're not union plants, or they're not at least under the master agreement. So people working there are sometimes in quite dangerous and difficult jobs, working with dangerous chemicals in very high-tech settings, working for half the pay that the kind of traditional automakers in traditional gas-powered vehicle plants are making. And so they really were seeing themselves losing ground there as the country transitions to clean energy. And so that was a real tension with Biden and Democrats that are pushing for both good union jobs and this clean energy transition. So I think that we don't know yet the fate of some of those battery plants and some of the EV specific agreements that they may or may not have reached in this agreement. We haven't seen that language yet, and President Fain did not mention that in his address last night. So we're waiting to see the final agreement, and of course what they come out with General Motors and Stellantis. But this has been a real test of where the UAW stands in this new transition.
Yeah, great insight. Tanya Snyder covers transportation for Politico. Great piece in Politico, Politico.com. And Tanya, I know a lot of our listeners did not wake up this morning wondering, how is the auto workers strike impacting me today? But I think you just laid it all out for us in terms of what it will ultimately mean, whether that's in gas-powered vehicles, electric vehicles, moving on to a greener and more renewable source in terms of transportation. Fantastic perspective that really does impact all of us. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Again, that's Tanya Snyder. She covers transportation for Politico, and it really is an interesting thing. And you can fall anywhere on the spectrum in terms of what you think the role of unions should or should not be, how they should intersect and connect between workers and management and owners, what the government's role is in all of that, whether it's a president or a governor, whatever it might be. But all of these things are pretty interconnected. They impact our communities in a big way, and they impact our economy in really big ways. And so we will see Ford looking like they have a tentative agreement with the auto workers. Whether that will spill over to the other two major car companies is expected, but we'll see how that plays out. And then ultimately we'll see how it impacts both the production and the ability to remain competitive. With everything else going on around the world, some really interesting perspective as always. All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. We'll come back to talk a little bit more about the economy. Jeff Cox is going to join us. GDP grew at nearly 5%, 4.9% to be exact. What does that actually mean? How is it actually impacting you? We'll break that down with Jeff Cox coming up next.
Colder weather is on the way.
We've got to get those sweaters and jackets ready.
And storms, too.
Thursday, Friday, 40s and 50s, mostly cloudy, some rain developing.
We have you covered as the seasons change. Stay updated with traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s. Mornings and afternoons on KSL News Radio.
I know some of you are looking ahead to the holidays and you're already worrying about adding a little extra weight, picking up a few pounds with all those holiday parties. I'm telling you, since I started Soda Weight Loss nearly 2 years ago, after I dropped 37 pounds in 90 days, I've been at the same spot ever since. And I can go to holiday parties, and I'm not worried about picking up a whole bunch of weight because I'm eating differently, I'm looking at it differently, and my body is telling me what it wants and needs, not just based on what's in my eyes or in front of my mouth. And so it changes the game, and that's just how Soda Weight Loss works. It's based on science. You have your own coach and nutritionist every step of the way. It's not about potions and lotions and pills. It's science, and it's simple. Anybody can do it. Thousands are doing it around the country. You can do it as well. As I always say, especially rolling into the holidays. When it comes to your Soda Weight Loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning today. Win for the holidays. Take a new look at the way you take care of your health at sodaweightloss.com.
Whether you're ready for the cold or not, it's coming. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you haven't gotten your furnace tuned up yet, I'm about to save you some money. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but if you call today, Thursday, October 26th, and mention you heard this ad, we'll give you $95 off and tune up your furnace for only $29. Call Any Hour Services right now to schedule, 801-443-7400. Manufacturers recommend annual maintenance to ensure safe operation, maximize efficiency, and help your furnace last for as many years as possible. 801-443-7400. If it's more convenient, go to anyhourservices.com and look for the red button that says Book Online. Schedule your $29 tune-up there. To lock in your $95 savings, all you need to do is get a hold of Any Hour Services today. That's a $124 value for only $29 if you call Any Hour Services today. 801-443-7400. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
We're going abroad for the first time in years. To Spain. So we started using Babbel.
And started learning Spanish fast.
With Babbel, you can start having conversations in another language in just 3 weeks.
¿Cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo te llamas?
When you learn a language, you want to actually use it. Babbel is designed with that goal in mind.
In just 3 weeks, we're starting to have conversations in Spanish. Gracias, Babbel.
Babbel, language for life. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
Hey, this is Hans Olsen. There's a reason that more Utahns, including myself, are members of America First Credit Union. It's because we love being a part of a winning team. I opened my first business account with America First Credit Union going back 13 years ago. I've opened 4 accounts for each one of my children. I opened up my last business account with America First Credit Union because I know they're going to treat me and my family fairly. It's no wonder that Forbes magazine named America First to their 2023 Utah Best in State Credit Unions and their 2023 Utah Best in State Employers list. The only credit union in Utah to receive both awards. If you've got financial questions and needs, America First Credit Union has the answers. So come join me and thousands of others at Forbes Magazine's 2023 Utah Best in State Credit Union and Employer. Visit AmericaFirst.com or stop by your local branch. It's great to be on the winning team. Federally insured by NCUA.
Even before the pandemic, 1 in 5 American adults experience some form of mental illness, depression, suicide, prescription opioid misuse. Utah isn't immune to our share of challenges, but there is hope. We need to take action to keep our loved ones safe. That's why KSL has teamed with the University of Utah Huntsman Mental Health Institute to bring you hope and help you thrive. It's Healthy Mind Matters. Find out more at healthymindmatters.com.
Join KSL in the movie show this Friday from 9 to noon at the Salt Lake MPS store at 1600 Empire Road in Salt Lake City, mpsstore.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, residents of Maine struggling to process the violence of last night's shootings because Maine has been considered one of the safest states in the country. Second, a spokesperson from the Snowbird Ski Resort says if we keep getting snow at this rate, they may open earlier than the planned date of November 30th. And third, bigger vehicles may be adding to more serious auto-pedestrian accidents, according to a new study. Right now, 45 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
The latest economic report has been released showing our economy has grown during the third quarter of the year. The good news is that our GDP grew to 4.9%, highest growth level that we've seen in about 2 years. So we want to get under the numbers as always. What's driving the growth? What's the analysis look like? What's the reaction? And most important, what comes next? What does it mean for all of us? And we always turn to Jeff Cox, veteran journalist and the economics editor for CNBC.com. And Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Boyd, thank you. Always good to be here.
All right. Well, dive us in deep to the 4.9% rate for the third quarter. What does that mean? A little better than expected, I think, for most.
Yeah, it was a little shade better than the 4.7% estimate. It also represented more than doubling of the pace of growth from the second quarter, and it was the best quarter for growth that we've seen since the fourth quarter of 2021, which we knew we had a big growth spurt then as part of the whole COVID reopening. So it represents a very strong quarter for the economy. The big propellers behind it were surge in consumer spending. Consumer spending expenditures rose 4% for the quarter. We also saw a big jump in inventories. So those two components actually right there from a percentage point standpoint were pretty much responsible almost for the entire gain. We'd also seen some contributions from inventories, as I had said, and private domestic investment, which is always a good thing to see. And also, of course, the ever-present government spending was a significant contributor to the gain. So all in all, a good quarter, a better-than-expected quarter. But the big question remains what lies ahead.
Yeah, and let's dig into that what lies ahead component. It's always interesting to me that consumer spending continued to continue on. That consumers just kept saying we're going to keep shopping along here, and yet we've seen a lot of reports about emergency savings dropping, savings in general slowing down. Give us a sense in terms of what's underneath those numbers. And so is that a sustainable thing, or are we just looking for choppy waters ahead?
Yeah, I think, you framed the question very well because it really is the consumer's at a crossroads here. And it's going to be very pivotal for where we go for the economy. Where we go from here is to see whether the consumer can hold up. And all indications are that the consumer's running out of gas. This report today showed us that the savings rate decelerating again. Also showed us that real income is dropping. Real, of course, adjusted for inflation income is dropping, and inflation pressures still remaining. Of course, they're not at 9% where they were, 15 months ago, but they're still very significant. Consumers still struggling to deal with these higher prices, and they're beginning to exhaust their researchers. I think the last time that I was on the show, we talked about the fact that credit card debt is now over $1 trillion in the economy. So that's a huge number, and that's going up. So as that's going up and savings is going down, interest rates are staying high. Mortgage rates are now up at 8%. It's just you see all of these headwinds starting to build, and I think that as far as Q3 growth, enjoy it while it lasts because it's not going to last. The question is, how far how far do we tail off? Do we just kind of go back down to maybe 1.5 or 2% growth, or do we slide into a potential recession? A lot of folks on Wall Street have taken their recession calls off the board. I think you might start to see a change in that in the coming months. Those calls might start to come back on board.
Yeah, I think that's been an interesting thing to say, okay, it doesn't look like a recession. We'll keep going. But I want to kind of dig back into this a little bit because my question has been, are we fooling? Are we running on fumes? And did we just have so much momentum or just so much determination to run on fumes that we're keeping this thing going a little bit? And then what happens when that goes? One of the other things that you have pointed out is obviously the interest rates, the inflation numbers. You also pointed out that the resumption of student loan payments is also going to be another impact point on a lot of households. Give us a little preview into what that looks like.
Well, I think that what we've seen so far is what has really helped the consumer so much have been this influx of money that's been pumped into the economy from the fiscal well, and that well seems to be running dry. We're up against another, before you know it, hit on the debt ceiling. I would expect those negotiations to be maybe even more contentious this time around. So I think as far as that fiscal tailwind that the market had seen, that's over. We've already seen the monetary tailwind. That's over. I think the Fed's going to have an interesting time negotiating their way around this and figuring out a way to communicate what their future policy path is. Of course, the idea right now is higher for longer, but I'm also starting to hear more talk from my sources about maybe higher for longer it isn't going to be the law of the land. We've seen so many forecasting errors from the Fed over the last, say, 4 or 5 years. Yeah. This feels like this could be another one.
That's fascinating stuff. And then talk to us about it just from a context. I think one of the challenges, this is another one of those catch-22 moments, I think, for the Biden administration in particular, in that they say, look, 4.9% GDP growth, that's great. Things are going well. And yet you have such a disconnect with so many American families who are experiencing all the things we just described. Is there going to be a communication, whether it's from the Fed? I think that's one place where people have gotten more confusion than clarity. What is the message going to need to be in terms of aligning all of that?
That's a great question, and I think it really gets to the messaging from the White House. I think every time we get one of these inflation reports that come out, we're going to get another one tomorrow, the personal consumption expenditures report from September. It's going to be a little bit old news, but the market's still going to be watching this very closely because we all know that's the Fed's favorite inflation indicator. Every time one of these inflation reports comes out and shows the pace of inflation cooling, somebody from the White House comes out and says, hey, look at what a great job we're doing. Inflation's coming down. Isn't that fantastic? This is not the message that the American people want to hear. And that's, sounds like I'm stating a bold opinion here, but I can tell you that from our own CNBC opinion polls, the Americans' feeling on the economy right now is terrible, and it's all related to the fact that prices are still too high. Yeah. So whether inflation is running at 3% or 4% or 5% or 2.5%, people don't care. So I think that the idea of coming out and saying we're doing a great job on inflation, isn't this great, sounds tone deaf to the American people now. And I think that they're going to need to figure out a way to get another message that sort of says, we're working on it. We hear you. We know inflation is still too high, and we have a plan. but I'm not sure what that plan would be. But it just feels that they've got a real strong messaging problem here. I know they're all going to be looking at Jay Powell next week after the press conference after the meeting. No way the Fed raises rates next week, but I don't think they're going to be much of a way that you're going to see a signal for a rate cut either. And I think they're going to be looking at him to sort of deliver that kind of message as well, that we're still well attuned to the inflation situation, but we're our hands are basically tied at this point. They really can't move.
Yeah, great perspective as always. Jeff Cox, veteran journalist, economics editor for CNBC.com, always helps us make the dollars and cents make sense. And Jeff, thanks so much for exploring the numbers with us. And I think you nailed it on the messaging component to all of this. And that is going to be the tricky wicket, I think, for the administration and for the Fed as well, rolling into next week.
Definitely, yeah. I'll be at the Fed meeting next week, so maybe we can talk then.
All right, we will have you right back and break all that down for us. Thanks
Super.
as always, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You bet, Boyd.
All right, again, that's Jeff Cox. He is the best of the best in breaking all of that down. And so, yes, the administration will tout a good number, and it is a good number. So we should celebrate a good number, 4.9% GDP growth. That's a good thing, and a lot of good indicators on that. And at the same time, costs are going up. Interest rates are going up. Savings is going down. Consumer debt, credit card debt is over $1 trillion in this country. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed. We've been running on fumes. The question is what happens when we run out of fumes? That's going to be the real test. All right, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, Ian Rowe from AEI is going to join us. You never want to miss a conversation with Ian Rowe, so stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
Listen at home on any smart speaker.
And in your car at 102.7 FM.
This is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. People in Maine worried a gunman who killed 18 people at a bowling alley and a bar could be hiding anywhere among the small towns near Lewiston. KSL News Radio's Lindsay Ertz grew up in Maine and brings us this report.
Heather Cromer didn't stay at her home in Lewiston last night. She lives just 100 feet from the Shemenegis Bar and Grill. This morning, she asked police to double-check her house.
I didn't deadbolt the doors, so, somebody could easily say, stay hidden up there.
That illustrating the fear Mainers have lived with. Heather says as she was headed to her mom's house, she heard the pops of gunfire last night and dismissed them as fireworks.
I was hearing the fireworks as I was leaving. So that's why I didn't see anything, which was, in itself just really kind of scary because we almost drove past the bar when it was happening.
She says Mainers are now banding together to support each other. Lindsay Ertz, KSL News Radio.
We have new developments now in a deadly shooting that happened overnight in Salt Lake City near 2500 South and 1100 East. Detective Michael Ruff tells us the person they believe pulled the trigger stayed on the scene and has been speaking with investigators.
So this was outside. This wasn't in a residence or anything like that. But what the circumstances are around it are still under investigation. So our detectives are still working right now. It's still very early in this investigation. So that's something that they will learn over the course of the next few hours, days, and weeks.
The person who was shot was taken to the hospital and died later. Their name has not been released. At this point, no charges have been filed in the case. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day now 251 points, and the NASDAQ is down 225 points. And coming up, looks like things will stay cool, but the rain's going to stop. That's next. KSL News Time 2:02.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
The Salt Lake Chamber is Utah's voice for business. Okay, that sounds great, but what does it really mean? Well, as Utah's largest and longest-standing business association, they support and champion community prosperity throughout the state. And if you're in business, well, that's a very good thing for you. Be sure to listen to the Chamber's Speaking on Business, weekdays at 7:20, 11:55, and 5:20 p.m. on KSL News Radio.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by two guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you. Saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
I know it's Thursday, but give me 60 seconds and I'll explain how spending $29 guarantees your furnace won't break down this winter, or we'll give you your money back. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and when you have Any Hour do the annual maintenance on your furnace, it comes with our no breakdown guarantee, 801-443-7400. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Thursday, October 26th, and mention you heard this ad, you'll lock in a $95 savings and get your furnace tuned up for only $29. 801-443-7400. If your furnace breaks down any time this winter after we tune it up, we'll dispatch a technician to your home to diagnose and troubleshoot your system for free. And we'll give you back the $29 you paid for the tune-up. Where else are you going to find an offer with this little risk? You literally get your money back if your furnace breaks down. Call Any Hour Services today and schedule your $29 furnace tune-up. 801-443-7400. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Jeff Kaplan. Oh, I think it's obvious. My favorite news is what you hear in the minute every afternoon, an expression of what I'm actually energized about on any given day. My minute of news is just a moment to lift you up.
Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News, 3 to 7 on KSL News Radio.
Tim and Amanda, Utah's Morning News.
I know the news can be heavy. I hope we cheer people up, Tim.
We really do look for those opportunities, and we had so many nice comments during the height of the pandemic.
We're going to get through whatever this is and still have some fun in life.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
We have breaking news here on KSL News Radio. We're going to take you now live to Central Maine Medical Center, where authorities are giving an update on the mass shooting there yesterday.
Since earlier this morning, we continue to have 8 patients who have been admitted to our hospital after having 14 patients arrive last night over a 45-minute span of time. Of those patients, unfortunately, 3 of them passed away. The 8 patients, we still have 5 in stable condition and 3 in critical condition. To give you a nature of what we were dealing with last night, we had approximately 50 providers, nurses, respiratory therapists working tirelessly on the patients that we were seeing here. At one point had 7 patients in our ORs. We evolved our team of emergency providers, orthopedic surgeons, trauma surgeons, urologists, and vascular surgeons, and they provided expert and compassionate care to help out these patients, and we're able to unite many of those patients today with their families and loved ones. Our team continues to be resilient despite everything that has transpired over the last 24 hours. We're continuing to provide services for the patients who need us in our community. We will begin taking care of additional patients tomorrow, in order to continue to meet the needs of those in our community. question was raised earlier this morning around the emotional and mental well-being of our patients and of our team.
And you've been listening to a press conference out of Central Maine Medical Center where Dr. John Alexander has been giving an update just about the status of some of the patients there. Of course, at Central Maine Medical Center, they had 14 patients brought to the hospital. 3 died. We know a total of 18 people were killed. This shooting took place at a bar and a bowling alley. The other people died at that bar and bowling alley, and then 3 died at the hospital. So that's the latest of what we know. We'll continue to monitor this press conference offline and bring you any updates with Jeff Kaplan's Afternoon News. And we'll head to Boyd's show now.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, recent troubling reports of lost learning and proficiency since the pandemic have scholars, parents, and teachers looking for solutions to reverse America's educational decline. Many blame the system, choosing a victim kind of mentality and approach to it all. But if we want our children to succeed in school, there's a better, more empowering path forward, and that's where we want to begin our conversation. As always, it is great to have Ian Rowe join us on the program. He's the founder of Vertex Partnership Academies and a new international high school in the Bronx, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, of course. And he's actually here in the state of Utah today, an event with the Wheatley Institute happening down at the Hinckley Center at 4 p.m. You can also watch that online at wheatley.byu.edu. And Ian, welcome back to the show.
Boyd, it's so great to speak with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, it is always a pleasure, and it's always good to get an update in terms of what's really happening. The thing I love about the way you go about this is it's practitioner focused. It's not just ivory tower stuff. It's on the street, rubber hits the road. Give us an update in terms of where you see we are as it relates to that learning, and how do we actually chart that path forward?
Yes, well, as you mentioned, I am here at the Wheatley Institute today. And we're going to be having, I think, an interesting discussion around what is the right path forward for American education. Is it equity, which is kind of the dominant theme, which I'll talk about, or is it what I advocate for, agency? You just talked about the fact that, based on the pandemic, we had incredible learning loss across the country. But if we have to be honest with ourselves, even prior to the pandemic, only 34 or 35% of all American kids were reading at grade level based on the nation's report card. Even the district in which I run Vertex Partnership Academies, a new high school in the Bronx, of the 2,000 or so students that are in traditional district high schools, only 7% that start ninth grade 4 years later graduate from high school ready for college. So we have a very severe educational crisis in our country that existed pre-pandemic and just been exacerbated since. And the question is, what's the right approach to get us out of this morass? If you look at the mission statements of most education reform organizations, you typically see earnest language around we need to close the achievement gap, maybe by race, or by class. When it's by race, it's typically the difference in performance of black students versus white students. The reason I think that's actually a problem is that this focus on gap closing ignores the fact that we're not focused on achieving academic excellence for all, right?
Yeah.
So, it's the case that in the entire history of the National Assessment for Educational Progress, what's called the nation's report card. Since 1992, there has never been a year in which a majority of white students are reading at grade level, at 4th grade, 8th grade, or 12th grade. So even if we were to able to close the reading gap between black and white students, all we will have achieved is what I call universal mediocrity.
Yeah.
So
keep going. I was just going to say on that, if all we're getting to is universal mediocrity, I think that is the biggest threat to our democracy, is when we start just celebrating mediocrity and that becomes the new standard rather than getting towards that excellence that you're describing.
Yeah, because equity, almost by definition, it's equal outcomes by group, right? So if that's what you're focused on, as opposed to equal opportunity for individuals, which is what an agency approach is focused on, then you are radically shifted how you're orienting the kinds of things that you want to do. Like, for example, in an equity-based approach, if you feel, and this is how most equity advocates talk about differences or, let's say, their racial disparities in reading, their only solution or causality is that, well, then that must be due to racism. Ibram Kendi is famous for saying, well, whenever I see racial disparities, I see racism. And so therefore, all of their solutions are race-based, as opposed to trying to figure out, well, what are the underlying reasons why kids of all races are not being successful in our country? Could it be much more related to the fact that there isn't enough school choice or educational freedom? In the same district that we just opened up our high school in the Bronx, where only 7% of kids graduate from high school ready for college, there is now a legislative barrier. There is a cap on charter schools. So even if you had a great idea to launch a fantastic new high school that could serve those 93% of students who are not successful, you couldn't do it. That is a real example of a barrier that if you have a more agency-focused approach, which is how do we remove all of the barriers that ensure that each young person has the opportunity to attend a great school, then you have a very different set of interventions that you would put in place to really allow more kids to be successful.
I love that, and that is the key, and I know that's exactly what you do in the Bronx in terms of your school, in terms of removing artificial barriers from all shoulders, getting rid of those artificial weights, and creating that clear path, that equal chance, fair start for everyone, and then getting the system out of the way, that agency approach. And if you haven't checked out Ian's book that is called Agency, 4-point plan for all children to overcome the victimhood narrative and discover their pathway to power. You need to check that out. It is a fantastic read. And again, if you're looking for a great mind-bending, stimulating conversation this afternoon, you can either go down to the Hinckley Center. The Wheatley Institute will have the Ian Rowe lecture at 4 p.m. today at the Hinckley Center up on the 3rd floor, or you can just check it out online. They will stream it at wheatley.byu.edu coming up at 4 p.m. today. Ian, it is always a good day when you are in the state of Utah. We appreciate your innovation and the way you look at creating that equal opportunity so that everyone can become their very best self. And I always appreciate your perspective. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for that. And if folks come at 4, we'll also be talking about virtues-based education, what it means to offer the kind of education that inculcates young people into these virtues of courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom as the foundation for how they can lead a self-determined life of meaning and purpose.
Oh, and I can't wait. And we're going to have you come back and do a deep dive on the virtues. All of those are crucial things that we need, not only in our students today, we need them in our Congress today, we need them in our neighborhoods and in our communities.
Yes.
Ian, thanks for leading that conversation for us.
Thank you, Boyd. Very honored to be here.
All right. And that's Ian Rowe. He is an extraordinary thinker and innovator in this country. And again, he's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, founder of Vertex Partnership Academies. Just extraordinary work going on, International High School there in the Bronx, that is transforming lives based on these principles of agency. And as Ian just described, those virtues that actually lead us towards a better way of living. We'll step aside. We'll come back with some more Inside Sources coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. It's football season, NBA basketball season, and a season of important and sensitive stories. Elections at home, war abroad. So depend on Tim and Amanda for the latest breaking news from 5 to 9. Get analysis and discussion with David Dejanovic and Boyd Matheson. And updated news and traffic as you drive home with Jeff Kaplan. In this season, rely on KSL for certainty. We have you covered at KSL News Radio.
Do you have chirping smoke detectors? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you've ever experienced chirping smoke detectors, you already know how annoying it can be. A great first step to try and stop the chirping is to change the batteries. If the chirping continues, it's possible that your smoke detector has gone bad. As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't even realize that manufacturers recommend replacing the smoke detector altogether after 10 years. If you remove the smoke detector from the wall, on the back you should find a date of when it was made. Do a little math and you'll know how old it is. Now, Any Hour Services knows being a homeowner means you've got a list a mile long of things to do around the house, and check my electrical system probably isn't one of them. That's why we've put together this radio special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive inspection of your electrical system that includes testing those smoke detectors and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. Call Any Hour Services to schedule it. 801-443-7300. 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit. And make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the manhunt continues for the suspect, Robert Card, thought to be the shooter who killed 13 people and injured dozens more in Lewiston, Maine last night. Second, new developments in an overnight shooting in Salt Lake City last night that occurred near 2500 South and 11th East. And third, delays in getting the new homeless camp in Salt Lake City opened. They're still looking for an operator to run it. Right now, 46 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, special elections often don't get the same kind of attention that a presidential election year race might get, but they're every bit as important. And we have one going on this year that's really important for an open congressional seat here in the state of Utah. And one of those candidates running in Utah's special election is Celeste Malloy. She's the Republican nominee. She's been hitting the campaign trail hard leading up to, we can almost say this month. So we've got just a few days left. And Celeste, welcome to the show.
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks, Boyd.
So first of all, give us just a little perspective from the campaign trail. You're coming down the home stretch again, kind of a unique thing. It's not going to be the first Tuesday after the first Monday. It's a little later in the month of November, but give us a lay of the land.
So the election's on November 21st, and I remind people of that every chance I get because it is 2 days before Thanksgiving. And we have had a special election in the not too distant past in Utah, but everybody forgets how it works. And so I'm surprised how many people think that because Chris Stewart was a Republican and I won the Republican primary that I'm already a member of Congress. We still have a general election, and it is on November 21st. So it's important that people vote. and remember that it's still going on. And it's really relevant right now because everybody's been watching what's happening with the speaker, and we're down a vote. Utah's 2nd district doesn't have a voting member right now.
Yeah, that was always a little disturbing to look up on the tallies there, and there was 221, not 222, as there should be. And, of course, that changes the number in terms of votes that you have to get, normally 218, one short. And so this is an important seat that's going to be filled. As you've watched that speaker race, let's talk about that for a second. Give us kind of your perception in terms of how that played out, and then any connection you have with the new Speaker of the House and what that might look like when you show up if you win at the end of November.
Yeah, I get asked about this a lot, and as of today, the answer is a little bit different. People have been asking me who I would vote for, and that's not really a relevant question anymore. But I said all along, I wanted to vote for somebody who had a plan for uniting the conference and getting the House back to doing the work the House should be doing. Yeah. The House is supposed to pass a budget and legislate. That's it. And being on the news every night, not part of that job description. And I think the average American doesn't want to spend as much time thinking about the United States House of Representatives as they've had to spend the last couple of weeks. So I'm really excited that we have a speaker. And I've spent a little bit of time around Speaker Johnson. I don't know him super well. Don't ask him if he knows me because he'll say no. But he's been on the Weaponization Committee, and Chris Stewart was on the Weaponization Committee, and I staffed him on that committee. So I've been able to sit and watch him work with his colleagues and on some on some very controversial issues and in some really fiery hearings. And I think he'll do a good job. Yeah. He's really kind of even-keeled and soft-spoken, and he looks like he should be the Speaker of the House. He has really good hair and just a little bit of a drawl. Yeah.
I think the drawl helps a lot.
Yeah, it's very calming, very soothing.
Yeah. It has been interesting, and I would encourage everyone, if you didn't listen to the new Speaker of the House deliver his remarks in the well of the House yesterday, I thought it was, of all of the speeches I've listened to, people taking and picking up that gavel, I thought it was one that was bipartisan. I thought the fact that he talked about that his office would be open, it would be transparent and honest, that members could be certain in the process, that ultimately you can lead to some accountability. And so I think that's an important thing, regardless of where people fall on the political spectrum. It goes back to what you were saying, Celeste, that this is about governing and actually getting those jobs done.
Yeah, and I have to assume that everything he's been part of, we've made history the last few weeks, for better or worse, and I have to assume that influences how he gave that speech, how he plans to be as a speaker. Some of the complaints people have really did need to be addressed. We do need more transparency. We do need the average American to know how the House arrives at its conclusions, why it's doing what it does. And so I like that he's addressing that. Yeah. I don't like political drama. I don't like political stunts for the sake of getting headlines. But I'm happy to see that we're sort of moving past that phase and that some of the concerns are being addressed.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that we always try to help people get to, is that part of the conversation. And as a candidate, as you're continuing to introduce yourself to all the voters in the 3rd District, I was
second.
Oh, I said 3rd. Sorry.
Don't tell John Curtis I'm trying to run a coup.
That, yeah. As you're introducing yourself to voters there, give me a sense. I like to give voters a sense of how you think and why you think influences in your life in terms of people that make a difference in terms of how you start to make decisions. I think that matters when you're casting a vote.
That is a really good question, and it's probably one I should talk about more because people are trying to get to know me. It gives me a chance to address something. So I've brought it up. The media's brought it up. Everybody loves to talk about how I grew up in a single wide trailer house, and I did. And my siblings have all mentioned that, they don't like that. That's what everybody talks to them about now. It is true, but I feel like I have done my parents a disservice in letting everybody talk about that without also pointing out that I grew up in a house that was completely full of books, and my parents really liked us to read. They really encouraged us to, if we were curious about something, my mom would say, go look it up. Now we all have smartphones and we're all used to looking it up, but in the 80s, that was a lot harder to do. And my dad likes Shakespeare, and, we watched Shakespeare movies. And so I think some of my early influencers are just, watching Shakespeare movies, and they're usually political dramas, right?
They really are.
Romeo and Juliet is not one of my favorite, but I like Henry V. And so I think that has definitely influenced me. And in my family, we talked about the Constitution a lot. We talked about our system of government. And my parents, instilled a love in my siblings and I of the system of government. Not just, I'm proud to be an American, and the 4th of July is my family's favorite holiday. We don't get together at Christmas or Thanksgiving anymore, but we get together on the 4th of July. But we talked about things like federalism and the separation of powers over Sunday dinner. And sometimes it devolved into arguments and sometimes it became a great conversation, but they were the kind of things that we were thinking about all the time.
Yeah, that's great. And the one question I always ask candidates, you've learned by experience, especially in a short form special election, campaigns are hard. There's a lot of pain in the neck moments, to be sure. And so I always like to ask the question, even if you come up short at the end of November, what makes all of this worth it for you?
That is an easy question. And it's an obvious question to anybody who's watched this campaign. I am a rural girl, and I care about the whole district. I've said all along that whoever represents this district needs to represent it as a whole. And I've put in a lot of time in Salt Lake and Davis counties the last couple of months to make sure people know I mean that. But the thing if it'll make it all worth it if I get hit by a bus today and this is all over, is that in the final tally in the primary, the rural counties made the difference in this election. And I think that means no one can run in this district ever again and ignore the rural counties. And that doesn't matter to me only because I've spent most of my life in rural areas, but also because, going back to our system of government, it's representative.
Yeah.
And if you can just play to one part of the district or another part of the district and ignore everything in between, it's not very representative. And I want people all over this district to feel represented. And the rurals are definitely feeling like they have power right now, and I love that.
Fantastic. Great perspective from the campaign trail. Celeste Malloy, Republican candidate for Utah's 2nd Congressional District. Campaign coming up, election coming up at the end of November. Just remember, nothing says Thanksgiving like casting your vote on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We encourage everyone to get out and vote in those elections this year. Celeste, thanks so much for making time for us today.
No problem.
All right, we'll go ahead and step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour, people from Maine reacting to last night's mass shooting in Lewiston. Alyssa King lives about 25 minutes away and says most people don't even lock their doors in her neighborhood. Now they're trying to figure out how to process one of the greatest tragedies the state's ever seen.
After a certain period of time, people will probably start to come back to sort of as much of normal as it can maybe be. It won't ever be normal again. Just, this is uncharted territory for us.
Maine is known as one of the safest states in the country. Last year, there were a total of 29 homicides statewide. Salt Lake City police say 2 squads focused around homeless resource centers are having some success. They started their work in July. The executive director of the Road Home, Michelle Flynn, says there's been a noticeable and positive difference.
I think the officers have been really good in trying to develop positive relationships. A lot of the people we serve may not have had great interactions with law enforcement in the past, and it's really wonderful to see that trust building up between law enforcement, to see them as a support.
Flynn says they still need to have more affordable housing so people don't wind up in the homeless resource centers in the first place. An employee was critically injured in an auto pedestrian accident at the Walmart in Harrisville. Police say the woman was trapped beneath a vehicle in the parking lot. Crews had to lift the vehicle to get her out. Police say the driver stayed on the scene and cooperated with the investigation. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day, 251 points, and the NASDAQ was down to 225 points at the close of trading. The S&P 500 down 49. And our KSL weather, it's going to stay cool, but the rain's done for now. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
Early mornings can be hard enough, just getting yourself going.
We try to make it a little easier with news and weather from comfortable, trusted anchors and reporters.
Join us on Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9
on KSL News Radio.
Hey, this is Hans Olsen. There's a reason that more Utahns, including myself, are members of America First Credit Union. It's because we love being a part of a winning team. I opened my first business account with America First Credit Union going back 13 years ago. I've opened 4 accounts for each one of my children. I opened up my last business account with America First Credit Union because I know they're going to treat me and my family fairly. It's no wonder that Forbes magazine named America First to their 2023 Utah Best in State Credit Unions and their 2023 Utah Best in State Employers list. The only credit union in Utah to receive both awards. If you've got financial questions and needs, America First Credit Union has the answers. So come join me and thousands of others at Forbes Magazine's 2023 Utah Best in State Credit Union and Employer. Visit AmericaFirst.com or stop by your local branch. It's great to be on the winning team. Federally insured by NCUA.
This is Todd Frayton's heart. He's begun his wellness journey. This is its sound on a treadmill, at a slight incline, on a stroll through the forest. And this is the heart of Maria Sanchez, his physician. What's it doing here? A lot, actually, because when we partner with you, we don't just offer a strategic plan and status updates. We put our hearts into it, beat for beat. We call it the power of we, Intermountain Health.
I know it's Thursday, but give me 60 seconds and I'll explain how spending $29 guarantees your furnace won't break down this winter, or we'll give you your money back. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and when you have Any Hour do the annual maintenance on your furnace, it comes with our no breakdown guarantee, 801-443-7400. Normally, we charge $124 to tune up your furnace, but not today. If you call today, Thursday, October 26th, and mention you heard this ad, you'll lock in a $95 savings and get your furnace tuned up for only $29. 801-443-7400. If your furnace breaks down anytime this winter after we tune it up, we'll dispatch a technician to your home to diagnose and troubleshoot your system for free. And we'll give you back the $29 you paid for the tune-up. Where else are you going to find an offer with this little risk? You literally get your money back if your furnace breaks down. Call Any Hour Services today and schedule your $29 furnace tune-up. 801-443-7400. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
Heads up in Salt Lake City, traffic control is being conducted on 800 South near 3rd and 4th East Street. That's in both directions, and it's due to an apartment fire. And farther south, crews are still working to clear a crash on Redwood Road northbound at 8600 South. Join the Utah Symphony for the greatest classical hits from the 1700s to today. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahsymphony.org. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we are looking for cooler weather in the temperatures in the 50s through the rest of the week. Drier tomorrow, but we could get some more rain on Saturday. And right now, we're at 46 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, we're going to shift gears just a little bit to change topics. A topic that has been a little more top of mind than usual for a lot of Americans, especially post-pandemic. And that was earlier this year. The United States Senate, of course, had initially relaxed the dress code, allowing members to go to the floor of the Senate, the well of the Senate, and vote in shorts and flip-flops as opposed to the regular dress standard. They have reinstated the dress code. And it's really interesting. We want to look at the connection between dress code, and 85% of Americans believe that incivility is worse today than it was a decade ago. Someone who has done a deep dive look at this, including a look back to the 1968 movie The Odd Couple, which if you haven't watched recently, always worth a rejoin. Jay Evenson joins us, Deseret News opinion editor. Jay, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Boyd. Thanks for having me.
Your headline today, have we become a nation of slobs?
The answer is yes. But you know, if you want to lose friends, write a column on this. you hear from more people saying, "Hey, I dress like a slob, but I'm a good person," and and of course they are. But the point is that we think that dress is trivial, but it's not, and it affects us and the way we act, and then it affects other people. And you mentioned The Odd Couple. I happened to watch that with my family the other day, and I was struck. This movie was made in 1968, and it was Walter Matthau plays Oscar Madison, who's supposed to be a slob. But if you took his character off the screen of that movie and put him in everyday life today, he would be well dressed. I mean, he wears a suit, a white dress shirt, and a tie when he goes on a date. The worst he does is he wears a T-shirt with a sport coat, which probably wouldn't have gone over very well in 1968. But today we think, yes, he's pretty dapper. He's dressing up. And that made me think, wow, we have come a long way in 55 years.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look around, and it's a people think it's not a problem, but it really is.
Yeah, and so let's break it down a little bit. And some people say, "Oh, you're just being overly pompous, or you're being, too worried about this or that." I am who I am. Pandemic has proven I can, do my meetings, in my bathrobe or in my shorts on Zoom. But what does it actually do? Get underneath that a little bit, and some of the research you did, and what you actually found out.
Yeah, I think most of us have had that feeling where we've been in a clothing store and we found something that looks really looks good on us, whether it's a suit if you're a man or just the right dress if you're a woman, and you look at yourself and you feel differently looking at yourself that way. You think, oh, I look great, I look nice. You feel more confident. I called my good friend Judith Rasband. She's a consultant. She's the founder of the Institute of Image Management down in Orem. And she does this for a living. She consults with people on how to dress, and she's written a fashion columnist. And she was very clear about this. She says the way you look affects the way you think, the way you feel, the way you speak, the way you act or behave, and only then the way others react or respond to you. So there really is a connection between how we feel and how we dress. And beyond that, we're showing respect for the situation that we're in, the institutions that we come in contact with, and the people we come in contact with. Now, we've all been to weddings or funerals lately and seen people wearing shorts or Levi's or something like that, and it signals to whoever you're meeting there how you feel about that institution or how you feel about the person being honored. And we may not stop to think about that so much today, but it really is sending that message to other people. And so I look and I think, gosh, when I was a kid, you wouldn't think of going on an airplane without wearing a suit and tie.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, back in the 60s. Do we think today that we'd have all the problems with the rude behavior on airlines and people being kicked off, people doing bad things to each other if we were all dressed nicer? Now it sounds simplistic, and I think it's a factor. It's not the only factor, but we didn't have these kinds of problems 50, 60 years ago that we're having today. So there's got to be something to it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to look at the connection, whether it's causal or just connected or a byproduct of it is so interesting to dig into. But I do think it's true in terms of not just the way you think, the way you feel about yourself for sure, but as you pointed out, even your behavior shifts. And if nothing else, just showing respect. I was one of those who was a bit appalled that it would be okay to just show up in such sloppy dress in the well of the United States Senate. To me, that's not respect for the office or the institution. And at a time where our trust in such institutions is so low, I just can't imagine, someone giving a floor speech on an important issue of the day, whether it's Israel or Ukraine or whether it's a mass shooting, showing up in flip-flops and a T-shirt and having the same kind of respect for that moment. I think is also part of it. It's not just the institutions, it's respect for the moment and what your role is in it.
Absolutely. And if the image of somebody in shorts and a hoodie giving a floor speech in the Senate doesn't jar you, then I think you need to sit back and think about this a little bit harder. You want to do an interesting thing. If your listeners want to do something interesting, is Google baseball games 1930s photos, and you'll come up with all kinds of pictures of people at baseball games wearing what we would consider, your Sunday best.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because we hear a couple of things all the time. One, that we can't afford to dress that nicely, and two, that it's uncomfortable to dress that way. Well, you can't tell me that if people in the middle of the Depression in the 1930s could afford to dress that way, that we can't afford to dress that way. And secondly, they look very comfortable. If you're wearing soft fabrics, if your clothes fit you, you're going to be comfortable. So it's interesting. And that, we're talking about 90 years ago, but really that isn't that long ago. We've changed a lot since then, and I think our behavior has followed that trend. And if it became stylish to dress in a way that showed respect for other people, I think our actions would follow along.
Yeah, no question. Great insight as always. Jay Evenson's the opinion editor for the Deseret News. Great piece at Deseret.com. You should go check that one out today, and definitely go Google those photos. It's amazing to go back and look at some of those pictures from a lot of different kinds of events and say, wow, they look really classy. They look really good. And amazingly, the behavior seemed to follow. So, Jay, thanks as always for joining us. Great perspective.
Thanks, Boyd.
All right, again, that's Jay Evenson, opinion editor for the Deseret News, and great perspective there. And I do think, again, you don't need to be pompous or arrogant or anything like that in terms of dress. I think it's looking your best, I think, is the most important part of that. But it does impact everything. It impacts the way you feel about yourself. It's the way you think. It's also the respect. I think, for me, that's always the big question is, am I showing respect whether I'm going to somebody's house or to someone's place of worship, whether I'm going to an event, a meeting, a dinner, a performance, whatever it may be. It's that showing of respect for who you're going to be with, I think, is what's really telling in all of that. Something to think about today. All right, we'll go ahead and step aside for one last break. When we come back, some final thoughts on Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey guys, are you over 30? Let's talk about testosterone and performance. Your testosterone can decline at an average of 1% to 2% a year after you turn 30. And Revive Men's Health have been experts at treating men with low testosterone and ED since 2011. We're the clinic guys come to when their current treatment isn't working. They have a complicated medical condition, or they're just not happy with their performance. We love what we do and the patients we care for. You can ask our patients. We did, and we have a 99% patient satisfaction rate this year. Our patients even tell us we're more affordable than their insurance deductibles and copays. Let's get to the bottom of your issues and fix them. That's what we do, and we do it really well. Book your T-Check and exam today. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send us a private message at ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
When it comes to your electrical system, do you know the warning signs to look for? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's okay if you don't know, but here are a few things that you might not even realize could be a sign of a bigger problem. Wall plates that are hot to the touch, discoloration around switches or outlets, if you hear crackling or popping or buzzing around switches or outlets, a breaker that trips a lot, switches that feel loose when you operate them, if your lights dim or flicker when a major appliance comes on, if your plugs fall out of the wall easily. You know, you're not supposed to have to bend the prongs out on a plug just to get it to stay in the wall. If you notice any of these things, you should consider having a licensed electrician check your system out. If you don't know anyone, Any Hour Services has put together a radio-only special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive electrical inspection and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. To schedule your comprehensive electrical inspection by a licensed electrician for only $29, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7300. That's 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
This holiday season, Yes Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric, part of the ARS network, would like to recognize those making a difference in our communities. Through our national ARS Cares Community Heroes program, we want to give back to a community hero for the positive impact they have made by giving them a new heating and cooling system or water heater. Take a minute to nominate your deserving community hero in need by visiting ars.com/ARScares.
Are you a business owner with over 25 employees? Are you currently using a PEO for payroll, HR, or benefits? If so, you're spending a lot more money than you need to. My name is Keith with Magellan. PEOs charge $25 to $40 per employee per month, and that's before the hidden markups that go straight into their pocket. Did you know that most PEOs charge you a higher tax rate than they have to? Did you know that most PEOs don't shop your insurance policies to get the best prices? Those two markups alone cost your company thousands each year. The bottom line is PEOs are the most expensive way to manage payroll, HR, and benefits. What if there was a way to handle all of your HR needs for a fraction of the cost? Last month, we did a side-by-side comparison for a company with 60 employees. They saved $80,000 a year without giving up a single service, feature, or benefit. We're Magellan. We provide payroll, HR, and benefits for less, a lot less. Text HCM to 57500 now to get a free comparison to see how much you could save.
Can't get enough of University of Utah sports? Then you need the Utah 360 app. What's Utah 360? It's a free app that lets you access the Utes like never before. Think player profiles, local KSL coverage, game stats and recaps, behind-the-scenes exclusives, and tons more. This is the perfect app for any University of Utah sports fan. So head to the App Store or Google Play Store to download for free today.
Hi, this is Clark Ivory with Ivory Homes. 2023 is turning out to be a great year for Ivory home buyers. Let me tell you why. The number of existing homes for sale is way down, so with fewer used homes to choose from, new home sales have soared. At Ivory Homes, we are creating all kinds of possibilities for you. A great selection of new homes ready for move-in, and fixed interest rates as low as 6.625%, saving you hundreds on your monthly payment. Check out Ivory Homes today.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Most of us like to be out in the sun. That's why sunscreen and other safety measures are key to protecting your skin from aging and cancer. The FDA recommends using a sunscreen with an SPF of 15 or higher. Also, look for broad spectrum on the label. That means both harmful ultraviolet A and B rays are blocked. Remember, SPF plus broad spectrum equal healthy fun in the sun. Visit www.fda.gov/sunscreen for more information. A message from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Dave and Debbie.
Where do people in Utah have an opportunity on a regular basis to voice their opinions? That's on our show on KSL News Radio. You have a way to share your experiences and to get your message out to the entire community. Where else in Utah can they go? Nowhere. That's on our show.
We have to be so careful not to take things out of context. It's very easy to manipulate what someone says to fit your own narrative. And we don't want to do that. We want to take your best argument, you take my best argument, and if we don't always say it perfectly, that's okay. It's a conversation. It's a give and take.
Listeners call the show and are willing to share how they're dealing with life circumstances. This is why our show is so important to this community and why our listeners are so important to KSL News Radio.
Listen for Dave and Dejanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, officials in Maine say only 3 of the 18 victims in last night's mass shootings in Maine made it to the hospital before they passed away. Second, a woman critically injured in an accident in a Walmart parking lot in Harrisville. And third, 2 new squads of the Salt Lake City Police Department working to make the areas around homeless resource centers safer. Right now, we're at 46 degrees with partly cloudy skies in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. As we round out the program today, just a couple things we want to look at as we bounce around some of the news of the day and what's been going on. And one that was really interesting earlier today, Strategic Communications Director for the White House, John Kirby. Of course, he's been in the middle of so many of the briefings of late as it relates to Israel, as it relates to Ukraine and what's happening there, hostage situation there with those that Hamas has taken, including 10 Americans, that we can't lose sight of any of that. And as he was doing the press briefing today, there was an exchange regarding civilian casualties with a reporter during the White House press briefing. And I want you to take a listen to this, and then we'll break down exactly what was said, what wasn't said, and what should we all really be thinking about. Take a listen.
So besides saying that he doesn't have confidence in these numbers, the president went further to say that innocents will die and that this is the price of the war. You also said that.
I have indeed.
Yeah, don't you think this is insensitive? There being very harsh criticism about it. For example, the Council of American Islamic Relations said it was deeply disturbed and called on the president to apologize. Would the president apologize, and does he regret say something like that? About
What's harsh is the way Hamas is using people as human shields. What's harsh is taking a couple of hundred hostages and leaving families in anxious waiting and worrying to figure out where their loved ones are. What's harsh is dropping in on a music festival and slaughtering a bunch of young people just trying to enjoy an afternoon. I could go on and on. That's what's harsh. That is what's harsh. And being honest about the fact that there have been civilian casualties and that there likely will be more is being honest, because that's what war is. It's brutal, it's ugly, it's messy. I've said that before. The president also said that yesterday. Doesn't mean we have to like it. And it doesn't mean that we're dismissing any one of those casualties. Each and every one is a tragedy in its own right. And each and every one we should try to prevent. And that is why we're in close contact with our Israeli counterparts, to do everything we can to help them minimize the risk to civilians that are in harm's way. It would be helpful if Hamas would let them leave their homes, leave areas, not shelter in tunnels underneath their houses and in hospitals, and let them get out. Let them get out of Gaza if they want to leave. We know that there are thousands waiting to leave Gaza writ large, and Hamas is preventing them from doing it. That is what is harsh.
That's John Kirby during the White House press briefing today. And regardless of how you feel about the administration or anything else, John Kirby does an extraordinary job as the Strategic Communications Director for the White House. I don't know that there has been anyone in that position in either Democratic or Republican administrations who has better represented the office and the institution than John Kirby. Again, you don't always have to agree with what he's saying or what the policy is. But nobody better at framing what the situation is. So here you clearly had a reporter who had much more of a pro-Hamas bent, wanted to really conflate everything in terms of casualties, in terms of the harshness of the realities of war. And John Kirby took it on straight on in terms of what actually is harsh. And you can be honest, as John Kirby said, and you can have compassion for every human life and every casualty, every single one, and you can be very honest about what Hamas has done and where this all began. And you can debate all of the other components and the fog of war and the messiness of war and the civilian casualties of war. All of those things are part of war. And all of that could end. All of that could end. Hamas could release all of the hostages right now. They could have a completely different path forward. But it's important for us to recognize, again, we often conflate everything and to be very clear, the life of a child in Gaza who dies in an airstrike, that life every bit as valuable as any other life anywhere in the world that is lost, whether by horrific means of slaughter like Hamas did going into Israel, or anywhere else for any other reason. Every life has value. Every life should have dignity. And yet we also have to be very careful that we don't immediately conflate everything into this moral equivalence in terms of how we get where we are. And that's often where we get lost in the words, we get lost in the social media posts, we get lost in the angles of it all and the politics of it all. And in that process, we lose the dignity of it all, and we lose the humanity of it all. And for groups like Hamas, that is precisely what they want, because they don't value life. They don't value the life of those that are fighting for Hamas. They don't care for the life of the innocent civilians that are being caught in the crossfire and losing their lives in airstrikes and the other things that happen in a war. Hamas does not care about that. And so that needs to be real clear. No equivocation. That's what evil looks like. That's what evil sounds like. That's what evil acts like. And there is no equivalence. And so compassion, yes. And I think John Kirby laid it out very, very well in terms of this is why we do the things that we do in this country. This is why we continue to have interaction with Israeli counterparts to figure out how can we minimize civilian casualties? How can we get aid to those most in need? How can we make sure that this doesn't get hijacked by Hamas and its fighters and its machine of terror and death? We have to have a different kind of conversation. I think John Kirby got it right today, 100% right, in terms of what is actually harsh. And we have to change that part of the conversation as well. All right, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for listening today. And as always, as you go out into the world, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.